Maybe you can talk a little bit about this idea of exposure that's in the exhibition and how it relates to the idea of naming or the right to name.
For me, performing colonial toxicity is a form of writing, exposing, and naming. So, given that the institutional archives are classified, I think the exhibition tries to write certain narratives down on these walls, on screens, through text, images, maps, stills, videos. It's also a form of naming. In a way, we know so much about Chernobyl, for example, but we don't know the term beryl. We don't know beryl bomb, which is a so-called nuclear accident that happened in the Sahara that is much more serious than Chernobyl. So the right to name beryl, to name Hoetger or again, that are two nuclear bases in the Sahara, but also the right to name Jerboa site, which is a radioactive matter that the French nuclear bombs in the Sahara created. The forms of exposure is about publicness. We are gathering all these sources and we try to really make them public, make them accessible so that other people can be aware of them, can record them, can circulate them, can write about them, and can also experience them. So for me, all these forms of exposure, writing and naming are really part of performing colonial toxicity.
French governing powers among them, colonial violence is not finished, and to behave otherwise is to deliberately turn away from its ongoing harm.
Samia would be the first to say that she is not an artist, but she was trained as an architect, and there is an aesthetic spatial sensibility in her installation, which we could imagine as a kind of hack of the colonial technologies that organize dominant archive architectures. Samia would also be the first to say that she is not an activist, but there is an activist orientation in her practice that begins at the moment she refuses to stay silent.
Together materials, voices, sources, space, their own memories, the formula that they have. So this is all somehow coming from private sources and archives.
So If I Can Dance is about performance and performativity, and this exhibition is called Performing Colonial Toxicity. Can you tell us a little bit about the way you see performativity and architecture in the sense of the built, destroyed, and imagined environment intersect?
For me, the disciplines of architecture and performance studies, they really meet at matters of the body. And I would say in particular, bodily experience, the rhythms of everyday life that are organized or undone by space, and maybe in particular by spatial planning. And it really at the core of this, I think, is a political question, because of course how space gets planned is always political, that I think actually architecture and performance, when they work together, they can actually help create a more powerful kind of response, right, to the ways that these decisions get made. In the exhibition, in your exhibition, Performing Colonial Toxicity, I think that performing is operating on a few different levels. So maybe a first level is this issue of bodily experience, right? So you really are meticulously tracking the different kinds of bodily experiences, and I would say human and non-human bodily experiences that are a result of this catastrophe of the French nuclear bombs. I think another level of the performance here, or maybe I would say performativity, is around this question of the archive, right? And how to make public, like you were saying, how to make public an archive or information that is otherwise has a blackout on, in terms of media or publicness. And maybe I say one third kind of form of performance that's really present, I think, is actually in the body of the visitor, right? When they enter into this kind of anti-colonial archive architecture that you're proposing, they also become part of these stories and part of these narratives. And it then also becomes a bit part of the responsibility of all of us to then keep carrying that forward, like Barrow or Regan or Hoetger.